Saab is no longer a familiar name in the modern car world, and honestly, it never really was a mainstream brand, even when it was still operating in the United States up until 2016. Saab cars have always existed on the fringe, chosen by people who didn't want to follow the crowd no matter the decade. Back in the 1960s, the British sports car boom was in full force. Cars like the MGB and the Triumph TR4 were everywhere, and Americans were falling in love with these small, lightweight, and nimble machines. These foreign roadsters were a clear break from the horsepower battles the big three American manufacturers were obsessed with at the time. Simply choosing a compact four-cylinder sports car already meant rejecting the status quo. But for buyers who wanted something even more unconventional, Saab unexpectedly had an answer. The same company known for building practical, odd-looking sedans decided to create a lightweight sports car of its own. This car weighed less than 2,000 pounds and was powered by one of the most aggressive-sounding engines of its era. Saab's creation would become one of the most intriguing sports cars of the time, the Saab Sonnet. The story of the Saab Sonnet begins in the 1950s, when a small group of Saab engineers and racing enthusiasts, led by Rolf Melda, set out to design a two-seat roadster for the brand. Working with an extremely tight budget, they built the car in a barn near Saab's main manufacturing center in Sweden. The prototype was first called the Saab 94, which made sense as it followed the Saab 93 in the lineup. Later, it was renamed the Sonnet, inspired by a Swedish phrase shown on screen because it's not easy to pronounce. That roughly translates to how neat it is. That name would stick. The first Saab Sonnet was incredibly light, tipping the scales at just 1,220 pounds. This was made possible by an aircraft-inspired aluminum chassis that was riveted together in many areas to maintain strength while keeping weight low. Visually, the Sonnet 1 looked like a clean and modern sports car for its time. It clearly borrowed styling cues from cars like the Porsche 356 Speedster and Alfa Romeo models of the era. While it wasn't quite as elegant, the inspiration was obvious. Unlike most Saab vehicles of the time, the Sonnet's body was made from fiberglass, mainly due to budget limitations. To save money, much of the suspension and drivetrain were pulled directly from Saab's existing production cars. This meant using components from the Saab 93 and 96. In a very unusual move for a sports car, the Sonnet was front-wheel drive. Power came from a 748 cubic centimeters inline three-cylinder engine, which was a two-stroke design. Because of this, the Sonnet sounded more like a motorcycle than a traditional car. It produced 57 horsepower and about 60 foot-lb of torque, thanks to its lightweight. The first Sonnet was agile, fun, and completely unexpected from Saab. When it debuted at the Stockholm Motor Show in 1956, it was very well received. Unfortunately, only 6 examples were ever built during the prototype phase. Saab soon shifted focus back to sedan production, putting the Sonnet project on hold. But this wasn't the end of the story. By 1966, the Sonnet made a dramatic comeback with a fully redesigned version known as the Saab Sonnet 2. The original roadster layout was gone. In its place was a sleek fastback design featuring a large glass rear window that strongly resembled the rear glass used on the 1965 to 66 Plymouth Barracuda. That large glass panel flowed into a sharply cut camback rear, which reduced rear overhang and emphasized the car's body lines. The front of the Sonnet 2 was also updated with recessed headlights and a more angular overall look. Unlike the original prototype cars, this version had a cohesive, well-funded design because Saab now had a real budget to work with. Even so, the Sonnet 2 was still extremely small. It had a wheelbase of just 85 in and an overall length of only 148 inches. That made it 10 inches shorter than an MGB and roughly the same size as a Triumph Spitfire. The Sonnet 2 kept the same philosophy as the first car by using as many off-the-shelf Saab parts as possible, but underneath it was completely different. It featured independent suspension at both the front and rear, making it well suited for cornering. The power still came from a two-stroke inline 3, but it was updated. The engine grew from 750 cubic centimeters to 841 cubic centimeters, increasing output to 60 horsepower. That might not sound like much, but with the Sonnet 2 weighing only 1,500 pounds, it was capable of exceeding 100 miles per hour if you were patient enough. The 3-carburetor two-stroke engine added a huge amount of drama, especially when paired with the 4-speed manual transaxle, which was shifted from the steering column. The result was a driving experience unlike anything else on the road. Saab's goal was to sell the Sonnet 2 in the American market, which was booming for sports cars at the time. The biggest obstacle wasn't pricing or design, it was the engine. While a two-stroke car worked fine in Sweden, it was a tough sell in the United States. Only 258 Sonnet 2 models were built with the inline 3 before Saab made a major change. To increase appeal, Saab switched to a 4-stroke engine. The problem was finding one small enough to fit. Inline 4 engines were too long, and a V6 was out of the question. That left only one unrealistic option, the Ford Taunus V4. This engine was originally developed for the Ford Cardinal Economy car project, which was canceled. It later appeared in European Ford models, but never in U.S. cars. This 1.5L V4 eliminated the need for oil and gas mixing, making ownership far easier. Power increased to 65 horsepower, but the real improvement came from the stronger torque curve. The V4 Sonnet felt much more responsive at low RPM, while the engine was heavier and changed the driving feel. Most buyers welcomed the added practicality. These models were called the Sonnet V4, and the switch clearly helped sales. From 1967 to 1969, Saab sold about 1,600 units, with U.S. prices starting around $3,200. By 1970, Saab felt the Sonnet needed a refresh to stay competitive. The result was the third and final version, the Sonnet 3. This update reused most of the existing mechanical components to keep costs down. The body lines and quarter panels stayed largely the same, but the front end was completely redesigned. The recessed headlights were gone, replaced by pop-up headlights above a full-width grille that housed the fog lights. At the rear, the curved glass was replaced with a flat fastback window that was cheaper to produce and hinged for easy access to the parcel shelf. This improved practicality and reduced manufacturing costs. The 1.5L Ford the Fifth 4 remained, though emissions rules slightly reduced power. In 1972, Saab upgraded to a 1.7L version, bringing output back to 65 horsepower. Performance wasn't impressive on paper. The 0 to 60 time was about 13 seconds, and the quarter mile took around 18 seconds. The Sonnet wasn't fast, but it was incredibly fun. The Sonnet 3 let drivers use every bit of power on public roads without getting into trouble. Inside, the Sonnet 3 received a revised interior with a better dashboard. More importantly, the transmission was now floor shifted, which greatly improved the driving experience. Road and Track praised the car for its handling and fun factor, even with a 60-40 front weight distribution. However, they noted some drawbacks, including difficult engine access and mediocre controls like the clutch, brakes, and shifter. Still, its steering feel stood out as a major strength. Sales improved compared to the Sonnet 2, but external factors soon caused problems. The 1973 fuel crisis and new U.S. crash bumper regulations added heavy impact bumpers, pushing curb weight to around 1,900 pounds. Performance suffered, sales dropped sharply, and in 1974 Saab canceled the Sonnet. Plans to revive it never happened. In total, just over 8,000 Sonnet 3 models were built, bringing total Sonnet production to slightly more than 10,000 units. These were undeniably quirky cars. They appealed to a very specific type of buyer willing to choose one over a British Roadster or another sports car of the era. Thankfully, 10,000 people did. Even today, these cars remain relatively affordable. A quick look at Bring a Trailer shows that the Sonnet is still within reach for many collectors. So the real question is this: would you choose one of these over an MG or an old Alfa Spider? If you enjoyed this video, like and share this video with other car enthusiasts. Don't forget to subscribe to Crypt for more documentary style videos.